Building a digital product is complex, demanding, uncertain. And that's where we come in. We're a group of creative thinkers, digital product specialists, dreamers, and team players. With over 15 years in the industry, 350 innovators, 50 awards, building over 150 digital products for our global customers. We engage in your awesome idea and help bring it to life. 99X technology is now 99X. We're tech team players.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you all are safe and sound. So, first of all, it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the day 2 of Hackathon RISEUP Industrial Talks with Entrepreneurs, organized by the IEEE Computer Society Student Branch Chapter of Sri Lanka Technological Campus. I'm 𝗏𝗏𝗃 𝐴𝐺𝐵 and I'll be your host for today. So today, it's all about startups in the IT industry. So our main intention is to make the undergraduates aware of what startups are and what are the problems which can arise when you want to start a startup, etc. First, there will be a session with 4 Ignite talks, and where the speakers share their experience on their respective startups. And after that, there will be a panel discussion on startups. So I would like to remind you the fact that we are hosting a live Q&A session to answer all of your questions. As you can see, there will be a link in the Zoom chat and YouTube chat. If you have any questions or if you have something to clarify, make sure to drop your question in our Q&A platform Slido throughout the webinar. So without further ado, let's move on to our first speaker. So it's my great pleasure to invite Mr. Aloka Gunasekara, who is the Director of Startups and Business Ecosystem Innovation at ULEAD. Sir, the session is all yours.
Right. Okay. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to the event. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about the journey that I've had, and I'm also going to talk about how especially you guys as students can perhaps learn from whatever that I've done. So I actually have my career has been on like multiple different areas. I started in product marketing or like digital marketing, and then I moved on to Scrum Mastering, moved on to product management, project management, and right now I actually do a lot of work with startup development. So that's my career path has been. One of the biggest things I've learned is that when it's kind of important for people to have a lot more experience and exposure to different areas, because that allows you to figure out like how everything fits, and then you get to learn how to solve problems in a very, very creative manner. Now, let me go back to my experience in marketing, on the digital marketing work that I did. So when I started digital marketing in Sri Lanka was actually quite new. I'm talking about some years back. And one of the biggest things I got to know was that when you want to do digital marketing, it's really important for you to be able to articulate yourself, especially when you're writing. And through that, I actually learned a lot about journalistic methods. For example, I learned something called the inverted pyramid model. So the inverted pyramid model, how that works is you essentially talk about the most important part at the beginning, and then you go down to the nitty-gritty of that news item. So the whole idea is that you get people to read about the most important bits at the very beginning. So right now, we call this, the development of this or the progression of this, we call clickbait titles and such. Like if you go to any Sri Lankan website or any Sri Lankan YouTube video, most of the people are now using clickbait titles. So the deal is what you learn actually matters like that. And then what happened was like, taking that experience, taking that knowledge, I actually moved on to product management and product development, where everything culminated in me starting my own company in 2011. So one of the biggest things about starting your own company is like nobody tells you what to do. And also when you're starting your company, you kind of tend to be a little headstrong. Like if you're not headstrong, you're not necessarily going to be like a good entrepreneur, because in Sri Lanka, everybody tells you how not to do a company or how not to run a company. So this includes your own parents, your friends, your peers, your school friends, so on and so forth. The moment you say that, hey, I'm going to start my own company, they'll be like, okay, why? Like, don't you have any other job that you can do? So when you have a lot of resistance coming your way, the one thing that you do is you doubt yourself out. You're like, okay, am I doing the right thing? So to break away from that, you definitely need to have a little bit of strong-headedness. You need to be like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to listen to these guys. I'm going to do it on my own way. This tends to be a bit of a challenge also, because sometimes you don't listen to the signals that something is wrong. This was definitely the case with what I did. There had been like multiple challenges that we had to face. I didn't necessarily look into these things because I thought that, okay, much the same way that people were asking me not to do these things, these signals that I was getting are the same. It's not. The signals were important. It was just that I was probably too strong-headed to actually pay attention to all the signals. So that's what happened with in the product management, and of course running my own company. I exited the company in 2016. So I ran the company for about 5 years. The first few products that we did actually did not work. But thankfully, we had like two different things, areas of work that we did. We had a bootstrapping operation. So we earned money and we invested that money into our product development. It also helped that two of my co-founders were actually based in Sydney, in Australia. And I was based here in Sri Lanka. So I was running the research and development center here in Sri Lanka. Those guys were doing the business development, marketing, and some of the project management work. Now, the interesting part here is when things failed, we actually learned what not to do. That was the biggest thing. And if you ask me, okay, what do I remember as successes? I honestly can't tell you like most of the successes that we've had, because those are not necessarily good highlights. But every time I failed, I can tell you in minute detail, like why we failed, what were the reasons that led to us. And we also made sure that we are not going to make the same mistakes again. So to me, running a startup personally is all about the learning process, and of course figuring out how to do things a lot more differently. One of the biggest things we learned, or I learned in that whole experience, is or whole process, is that when we started at the beginning, we actually put a lot more effort or a lot more focus into our product development. We thought that, okay, if we build it, people will actually come and buy it. But guess what? That didn't happen. So this is when I started listening to my experience in digital marketing, and I started looking into, okay, how do I bring that experience into the work that I do? So about 3 products that we did failed. The last product that we did was on property management. So what happened was the 2 co-founders that I had, they started investing in small properties in Australia, and there was no like a platform to manage your property. They were using Excel sheets to manage all these properties. And the fact of the matter is, like, if you have multiple property agents to manage it, imagine that you're owning a property in Sydney. The property agent in Sydney, the platform that he or she uses is different to, let's say, the property agent who manages a property in Darwin. So the only way that you can manage this whole thing is through Excel sheet. So we realized that, okay, there's a potential to create a platform, and we started developing it. But we developed it a little bit differently. Instead of going ahead and building the product, we actually went ahead and spoke to a lot of these small property owners in different meetings, gatherings. It's very common to have like regular gatherings with small property owners in Sydney and all these cities in Australia. So we went ahead, talked to these guys and said, hey, look, guys, we're having these problems about managing our properties. And they're like, yeah, we're having the same problems. And then we asked them, hey, look, okay, so we come from a technical background. So do you mind using our product if we actually come up with a product? And they were like, yeah, good idea, let's do it. So most people who said that this is a good idea, we use it, never actually used it. Only about 10% of the people who actually said they were going to use it, used it. So this is a really good analogy. So we realized that, okay, everybody who seems to be excited are the sort of people who are going to be using our product. And we realized that trying to solve problems for everyone is not going to work. So we started focusing on people who had very, very similar workflows to us. And then we started solving problems for them. One thing that happened was, now we are based in Sri Lanka. We were developing the product for the Australian market, and we are a small team. One of the biggest things that we realized is that you can't actually do it like that, because our initial product development was quite fast because we understood what needs to be done. We started developing the product really fast. But at a certain point, we realized that, okay, out of our sprint, our sprint was 2 weeks, that's 10 days. Early days, we would spend about a day to understand the requirement, and then we would do the development for about 9 days. But later we realized when the complexity started increasing, we would start spending about good 4 to 5 days just to understand the requirements of what we were supposed to do, because we didn't understand the market really well. And it's really difficult while you are based in Sri Lanka to understand something that's happening in Australia with all the accounting, the taxation, and all these other things. So we realized, okay, this is not going to work. And we closed down our operation in Sri Lanka and shifted the development to Australia. This is a really good learning point as well. And then moved on to startup incubation, acceleration, so on and so forth. Now, everything I learned, everything I literally screwed up, I used that experience and learning so that other people would not make the same mistakes. So one of the common themes that I'm seeing right now is like people are making the same mistakes. The mistakes I made when I was starting my startup, most people are making the same mistake. So one of the things that I would like you to do if you're thinking of starting a business is have a couple of mentors, people who have started businesses and people who actually know what they're talking about. But be very careful about the people that you pick. Pick people who probably have about 5 years of experience ahead of you. Like, for example, pick someone like Miller, or pick someone like Nigara, because there's something called recency of knowledge. So recency of knowledge is like, if I ask Miller a problem of, hey Miller, okay, so what's the problem that you had with paying EPF and ETF? He will immediately know, okay, the problems that he had when it comes to paying the EPF and ETF. Or if you go to Migar and say, hey Migar, okay, so can you please tell me like, what's the problems that you had when you were doing your crowdfunding program? He will immediately tell you like, okay, these are the problems that we had, this how we solved it, so on and so forth. Now, if you go to, let's say, for example, someone like Dhammika, he would not know this, because when he started the business, it was a long time ago, right? If you ask him, okay, what are the problems that you had when you were starting your business? He started his business in the 90s. The problems that he had is very different to the problems that we are having. So it's really important when you start a business that you have people with recency of knowledge, so that you can actually learn from them, and that knowledge is going to be useful for you to start your own businesses. So, I mean, yes, I was supposed to talk about how I came here and how I did things, but I think instead of talking about me, I wanted to share this experience with you so that when you want to start a business, you'd actually think about these things in a bit of a different way, so that you can do things in a way that makes sense.
Thank you very much, sir. And I believe it was the perfect start for today's session. So next, I would like to invite our next speaker, Mr. Migara Amithodana, who is the co-founder of MagicBit, which is an edtech solution company based in Sri Lanka. So, sir, it's your time to share your experience on your startups.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I must thank the organizers for inviting me for this session to share views with you all. So my journey started, I think, quite recently with the startup, because I was working in the corporate sector for some time after my graduation. But while I was working in the corporate sector, also I had this eagerness to do something on my own and develop something. And of course, a few of our friends that we had this idea where we can even create like Silicon Valley technology here in Sri Lanka. So we were quite into that, and we were doing some turnkey projects in Sri Lanka with some companies. And when we were doing that, we had the opportunity to work with the education sector as well, mainly developing training solutions and sometimes hardware platforms to conduct practicals like robotics and all. So we realized that there's a potential for this, and we saw the boom in the STEM education globally, and we studied some competitive products as well, try to identify what are the drawbacks in those products. So that's how four of us got together, and so three of us are Anuruddha, myself, and Akalanka. We were batchmates, so we knew each other for like 12 years now, and so it was quite easy for us. And Sudat came from the industry, and he also shared the same passion to about STEM education and all. And that's how we got together and we discussed what we are going to do and the solution. I think Sudat and Anuruddha are the first two to speak about this and this idea of introducing a single platform to all the students. Then there are a few prototypes developed, and we came to what we call MVP, or a minimum viable product. So I think we did that development even before we register the company. So after developing that and few samples, then we registered the company back in 2019. And afterwards, we try to produce it in small batches and try to develop the software, the content, the related things. And soon we realized that we don't have money for that. And soon we realized that although we think that we can do everything, we cannot do everything. And because when we were starting, actually, Anuruddha, myself, so we were doing the software, we were doing the hardware, we were doing the graphic designing, we were doing the digital marketing. So everything was done by us. And soon we realized that it's not the case. So if we want to grow, we cannot do that. And even we were doing the soldering work and all. So we realized that everything cannot be done if we want to scale up. And that's how we thought of fine-tuning everything. And it was a bootstrap project at the beginning. And while we are putting money by ourselves and developing product and fine-tuning everything, we were able to get traction as well by selling our product for the versions very close to the MVP to the customers and got their feedback, and we identify what are the drawbacks, and we were able to have better versions with every production of Magic. So basically our one is a product. So we had that opportunity of fine-tuning product every time, and even the software we released versions. So while doing that, actually, while we are getting the traction from the market and people are buying it, institutes are buying the product, we got the opportunity to work with some accelerators as well, especially with the Spiralation Accelerator by ICT. There's one in Institute of Morotoo, and there were a few others that we participated. So basically, when we were at the, I think one thing I can recommend to everyone is when we were at the beginning stage, so basically we were going to every accelerator, we were going to every free workshop, we were going to every free seminar. So whatever the opportunity, we always try to hop into that and get whatever the things that we can learn from that. So now we even limit Sri Lanka. So even if we find something in India, we always hop into that and see what others are doing and how they are doing. So I think it's quite a learning curve to understand how all that happens. And sometimes I think when it comes to these technical terms like let's say total obtainable market, or maybe the minimum viable product, or let's say product market fit. So sometimes you learn these technical terms, and I learn these technical terms while we are in the journey. So then we try to figure out what happens to our product and what is our product market fit and how we can, because the science of product development or the economics or financials, these subject areas, there are different things that are related to startups, and learning all that overnight isn't going to happen. So I think it's quite a journey everyone has to learn, and we also learned that during our journey. And one of the best things I think happened to us was while we are doing that, we also got few awards here in Sri Lanka and few international conferences. So with that also we got validation. I guess for any startup or a product, getting that market validation is a good thing, especially with panels or even with customers. Then afterwards we had the confidence that people will like the product, and that's why we went for a national crowdfunding campaign. Again, the objective was to build the community and people around it, plus get the funding as well, mass produce it. So, and we went for the crowdfunding campaign, and we relied on our network heavily on that. We didn't spend much on advertising in our campaign, and we were able to achieve that. And it's quite surprising to know that Sri Lanka is a very small country with 20 million population. And I think when you meet someone here and there in a session, sometimes link to you some other people, and again, so kind of a very small country, and that network works very well, and that networking effect worked very well for us. And that is one of the biggest supporting factors to for our crowdfunding campaign as well. Then after the crowdfunding campaign also, we got some good opportunities with international partners, got other, and now we are directly sending our product B2C to over 30 countries. And so it's quite a journey. And right now we just closed a pre-seed funding round with Lankan Angel Network to take our startup to the next stage. So that's our startup story, Magic Bit, and that's my experience. So one thing I would like to highlight at the end is, one thing I learned with the hard way is every step of our journey, I think as Aloka correctly mentioned, having correct mentors and seeking advice from others really helps for us, because we don't know everything, although we sometimes think we know everything. So definitely having good mentors helps a lot. So one of my mentors told me was always do objective decision making, which means, let's say I want to try out this product, so don't just go with the gut feeling and taking all the risk and all. Always research properly, check the data, and arrive at a decision based on the data you have. So then you won't do it. So I think this objective decision making was one of the turning points in my startup career. And that's about it. And that's all I like to share with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that valuable speech. And before moving into the next speaker, I would like to remind all the participants the fact that we are hosting a live Q&A session to answer all of your questions. So as you can see, there will be a link in the Facebook chat and YouTube live chat. So if you have any questions or if you have anything to clarify, make sure to drop your question in our Q&A platform throughout the webinar. So let's move on to our next speaker. It's my pleasure to invite Mr. Miller Alexander, who is a tech enthusiast, a serial entrepreneur, and also a co-member of SenseMate IoT Intelligence and Sense Agro Solutions, which is one of the pioneer IoT and AI companies in Sri Lanka. Sir, now it's your time to share your experience.
Thank you so much, Ravisha. Hope I'm audible.
Yes.
So, thank you. So, I think Migara and Aloka cover up many things about the base of entrepreneurs picking up. So, let me share where we started. So being honest, I don't have a vision to become an get into entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is not a concept we was taught or we get to know about from Jaffna University. So it was for the first time. So I just want to become a BA, business analyst, because I have a computer science background and want to start something on the career path towards the tech industry. But suddenly in 2013, around 12, 13, those period, when we are in the second year, we got exposed to a accelerator program for the first time. So I get to know most of these guys like Dhammika and all through hackathons. I was a hackathon freak. So we always in somewhere in a hackathon just like this. So, but now on people talking about startup and entrepreneurship campaigns and workshops regarding it. So hackathons like pretty much faded out right now. So this is a hot topic. That time it was just hackathons, no startup related programs happening. So for the first time, we got exposed to a program called 𝐴𝐿-IT-Hub. This was a Jaffna or Northern Province specific accelerator program where you just presenting an idea and people will give you thoughts about it. If you are fortunate enough, people might be joining your team and you can turn this into a business. So for us, it's another hackathon. That's how we get into it. So by participating to it, and because at that time the people we know as entrepreneurs are like Bill Gates or Elon Musk or someone. So we didn't know someone in from bottom up scaling environment. So that was a completely mystery. So honestly, today I'm an entrepreneur for the last 7-8 years. So I don't have any shame on saying that I'm not a born entrepreneur. I'm a taught entrepreneur. So I myself personally, I learned entrepreneurship by people doing it, and people forced me to getting in, and it become an addiction. So that's how it started. So 2013 around, so we participated in 𝐴𝐿 Geek Challenge. It's an accelerator program. So somehow there's an idea we presented and so on. That time only I met my partners, where Jay and John. They come up with a concept called SenseMate. So these guys are electronics and telecommunication engineers. I'm from computer science. So their concept was very, very simple. So they don't have an idea about startup. This is a tech project. So after the war in Northern Province, we had like 2-3 hours of electricity in some locations. So you will get electricity in the midnight or 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. So around 70 to 80% of the population are depend on agriculture. So they just want to go to the field and switch on the motors. If you talk about Bonni area, mainly 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 very creepy. In the midnight, you're supposed to go to the field to switch on your motor. So it's a very localized, geography specific use case they figure out. So that time IoT was not a concept. No investor willing to invest on a hardware company. We didn't know about that also. So this is a small piece of hardware these guys build. So since they are from electronics faculty, engineering, where you can simply switch on the motor or switch it off or schedule the motor's irrigation through SMS. So that's all the entire technology, basically putting a switch. So it's a very, very simple concept. You can switch on the motor with SMS. But we won the competition and people see this as a real use case. Fortunately or unfortunately, people get together and invest on us, and we become a company from day one of our graduation. So I joined my team from those time periods, and so all these, there is no individual investor. Probably we are one of the earliest, maybe one of the first in crowd-funded company in Sri Lanka, a community-funded company in Sri Lanka. In 2014, people get together and there's no individual investor. A group of community members and volunteers, they invested close to 3 million rupees worth of money into a hardware product, which you can switch on a motor. And happy to say that within 6 months, we put all the investment into the ground and we bankrupted within 6 months. So because it happens on, we are engineers, we know technology, we want to make the best robust technology and one of the best PCBs ever built. So we talk about weather conditions, and we talk about it's supposed to be robust and it's hard handling. We want to build something like Nokia 1100, whatever happens, it's not breaking. Our first PCB was built in Canada. It was $580, and we built the technology and put it in the ground. So it happens in 2015 early on. So it's close to 3 million rupees worth of investment on technology building and the application and platform. We build our own IoT platform as well. So everything happens. Within 6 months only we get to know we have 10 paying customers, and for a SMS application they could pay not more than 1 rupee more than 1,000 rupees in Sri Lanka. So we realized we are earning like 10,000 a month, and we already invested 3 million rupees investment, and we are not drawing a single rupee as a salary. This is nowhere near. So we bankrupted within 6 months. So that's the learning we got. Startup and entrepreneurship need plenty of things more than the technological aspect. Being a nerd, it's not enough. So then only we learned one of the important points where we were very happy to say that we got plenty of good well-wishers who are still, they are role models and guiding us throughout the season, and they guide us. This is the time you have to make a decision what kind of product you have to do, what kind of study you have to do. So we came back to Colombo from Jaffna in early 2016, and just like Miranga and team, so we got the blessings from the government. So we're getting into spiralation. So still people are there, 𝗓𝗍, and Hamad and all the things. So they support us, and we're getting into the program. Got a small grant, 1/3 of maybe 1/4 of the investment we got as our seed round. It's a very small amount. But we got an option where we stick with this product and try to build the business since the product is already there, or we pivot. So the concept of pivoting we learned from that. So that's one of the important learnings as early stage entrepreneurs we learned. So 18 months we don't had a single check which drove for us. For 18 months, SenseMade has only 3 engineers at the moment, which has 55 engineers and 14 country operation. That's a different story. But for 18 months, we had only 3 engineers, and we get nothing from the business. So, but that's the time we thought it's time to pivot. So the pivoting also taught by many people, the mentors and so on. So we changed our business model from agriculture, the farmers and direct to farmers environment to post-harvest technology. The supply chain and storage and all the perishable item environment. So it's similar technology, similar gateway, but this time it's remote sensing and monitoring, alert generations based on the product you store or transport. It became a fantastic hit for us. So we had, up to date, it's one of our main bread and butter. We have almost every blue chip company in Sri Lanka, all the blue chip PLC companies in Sri Lanka become our client, including Sri Lankan airlines and government bodies of pharmaceutical environment. So that product hit give us a confidence, okay, we are getting into something. This is might be a pathway. We getting serious into entrepreneurship, and we learn other hats beyond technology, business, finance, law, everything in a hard way. Even our TRC license was a very hard job. What we do, it's a simple thing now. You can simply apply through online and get it out. But it was a very hectic time for us. So everything learned in a hard way, and one of the important learning we believe at this stage we are operating globally and thinking globally, where we started from a very, very localized, very minute localized ecosystem, because we went to Barcelona for a Mobile World Congress where 17,000 people from around the world visited. That was a very interesting story. Where we got a small investment from Spiralation. We had like 300,000 rupees worth of money in the bank and no customers, 3 engineers. So we thought, let's invest this into this trip. If we get it something, we can go on, or we are always engineers, we always have jobs, right? So that risk, we invest that into a trip while we don't have a single rupee in bank. So with this last resort, we put it in this travel. A 16-day trip to Europe, pretty much like backpackers. We travel around saw plenty of global product, which is very minute compared to the product line what we have in Sri Lanka in terms of technical aspect, in terms of the elaboration of the platform what we have. But very simple concept, how big they scaling up those things. So that part gives us an inspiration for 𝗏𝑠𝑒nsa-Group. So we came back to Colombo again after 16 days and work on the building. And 2017 end, we started 𝗏𝑠𝑒nsa-Group. And you probably know 𝗏𝑠eNSA into many places right now. But it took one bankruptcy and 4 years of hard learning beyond technology and one pivot. So those are some of the concepts what we learned throughout. So after 4 years of hardship, finally it's become a good model. We pivoted in different mechanism. We thought about different pricing models. We understand few concepts. So as a takeaway, I just want to highlight few key points. If it's something not working, chin up and back up. Never fear about it. So second thing, the word of pivot. Dig deeper into the concept. That's highly important to know for any early stage startup. We will talk a little more on that. Third thing, always respect and learn from others. There's someone always here to guide you. So those are some of the important key points we learned. And yeah, believe we can share more towards the end of the conversation. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your experience. And now let's move on to our fourth and final speaker, Mr. Buddhishan Manamperi, who is a managing director at F-Code Labs.
Yes, so I think I'm audible for you all.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, thank you very much for the introduction and thank you very much for the invitation for this wonderful event. I think most of the advices are covered by this well-experienced startup members. But slightly my business and my vertical is slightly different because I'm into software development, software services business. So the experience will be a little bit different. But I'll start from the story, my personal story. So I'm also from Morato University and did the electronics as the major. And even during the, as a school child, I had that passion to build a brand, not a startup or not a company, but to a brand. And actually I started the music brand with my brother and started recording videos and get those into the DVDs and get it into nice small boxes and try to market them. So that's how I think I started building brand, and I had that passion. And when I entered to the university, then even in the undergraduate life, I started I think 2 startups and all 2 failed. And I with different people, with the same founders right now, and with different people as well. And I did around few projects, some service-based projects and some product-based products as well. And so it can be a HR platform. I did an HR platform and also a AI-based healthcare platform. So everything failed. I can actually explain why everything failed in if we have more time. Then after the graduation, I went to another startup called ODOC. So I think it was a well-funded startup at that stage. And with that experience, I started this company, the current company called F-Code Labs, with another 2 batchmates from the same university. So when I talk about the batchmates, the other founders, Tarindu and Ramesh. Tarindu is the neighboring index number in my university. So it's like we were together from the very beginning. We were staying at the same boarding place. We were in the same, let's say, for lab assessments project, every group project, even in the exams we were together, and also in the convocation we were together. So at the point of convocation, actually we had the rethought. See, we already had a different startup during the undergrad life, and that which was failed, and then we moved into different directions. I went to ODOC and Tharindra went to WSO2 and Ramesh went to Zone 24/7. And but we had the same passion. And even Ramesh, he was selling PCBs, he was selling sensor panels on eBay when he was undergraduate, I think, as an electronics undergraduate. So we had the passion, and but we didn't know what to start. As Mile very clearly, Aloka very clearly explained, we don't know. No one is going to explain what we are going to do. No one is going to guide us. So we started jumping off to the ocean, and I think sacrificing all the big salaries. And yeah, we started with just all the 3 founders, and we started doing some freelancing. And with the freelance projects, the revenue coming from the freelance projects, we gradually converted that into a company. And we haven't thought of taking an investment. We are still from the zero, bootstrapped money from ourselves. And we actually come to a position where right now we are with 40 people developing great software. And we are both privately registered both in Sri Lanka and also in Singapore, and mainly focusing on digital transformation and also on AI. And we have clients in Singapore, especially we work in Singapore government, and in Sri Lanka we work with the largest corporations like MS, Brandix, David Pierce and all. So this is the story of 𝐹 Labs and my previous startups. Regarding the advice that I can share is, if you want to build a startup, and if you want to pursue a career in a startup, what you have to do is you need to have that passion. I think, even though it's taught, or if you have that in the childhood, you have to maintain that passion. And also there can be obstacles in the middle. You don't there can be challenges, obstacles, everything. You need to have that perseverance. So if you keep saying that the government should fund you, government will need to support you, I think that's not going to work. So there will be plenty of opportunities. I think Sri Lanka, the talent pool is really good compared to the other countries, and we have resources. We have plenty of internet and all this literacy to the internet, and also literacy to the other things as well. So as Sri Lankans, I think we can do a great job if we identify the opportunities out there. So that's the message I have to tell. Yeah, thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buddhishan Manamperi, for sharing such an interesting and inspirational experience. So without wasting much time, let's move on to the most awaited segment of today's session. It's the panel discussion. So we have invited a special person to moderate the panel discussion for today. He is none other than Mr. Dhammika Marasinghe, who is currently working as an associate technical lead at Maturify, while volunteering at IEEE Sri Lanka section as the student activities chair. So Dhammika, hope you are having a good time here. Thank you for accepting our invitation and joining with us today. Now the panel discussion is all yours.
Thanks a lot, Vagesh, and thank you, Aloka, Migara, Mila, and Buddhishan for joining us today. Hope I'm audible and visible.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Great. Can you get all others to spotlight as well? Great. Okay. Thanks a lot. And I hope, like in the beginning, when all of these for entrepreneurs who are quite experienced in the domain, when they're sharing their experiences, they touch upon a lot of things. And as people who are participating in Hackathon, as well as people who are joining today, I'm pretty sure you all must have certain questions for them to clarify. And from my side also, I have a long list of questions that I want to clarify. So we have the Slido link in the chat. So if you are if you have any kind of questions, please do ask them in the Slido so that I can direct them to any of these panelists. If you want to direct them specifically to a certain panelist, then do mention that when you ask in the question. So to start off with, I'll ask this as a general question, and maybe Alok can start up on this ground. Most of the time, when undergraduates start thinking of a startup, which most of our audience is today, they start thinking this from things that they've learned, because they learn certain things in their university, so they try to apply certain knowledge to a product, or sometimes it's finally a project that they try to make it to a startup. So what I want to cover is, from idea to a startup, what exactly is the difference, and how exactly you should focus in on the actual problem rather than going behind one solution.
Okay, let me start this way. Okay, to be very honest, ideas are worthless if there's no execution behind it. So this is one thing that you have to remember about startups. Why I'm saying this is, if you are in love with your idea, and because of that, if you're not sharing it with anyone else, that means you have a bit of a problem. So we have, I mean, I used to be like this as well. So one of the biggest things is, like, if you think that, okay, you have a good idea that might actually work, just go and talk about it with other people. Chances are I mean, you think that they will go ahead and steal this idea, but see, they don't have the amount of knowledge or the amount of information that you have, problem that you are trying to solve. I'll tell you, like, what usually happens when it comes to identifying these problems. Usually, we identify these problems based on our personal experiences. Like, this is a very classic example. Like, whenever I talk to students from University of 𝗏𝗏𝗏 or students of University of Jaffna, most of their first idea that they talk about is how to create an app to figure out where the bus is. Like, quite often, like, a lot of people come and say, okay, look, I'm from the University of Jaffna. Okay, here's my app. The app is, okay, how do I find the bus and where it is? Because that's a problem that they're having. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, right? But the deal is, this is also a case of multiple discovery. The case of multiple discovery is very common to have multiple people figuring out the same thing at the same time. Now, this is accelerated mostly because of the social media that we're using also, because like, almost all your friends are sharing the same things on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever, right? And because of that, you like go through the same things, and you're like, oh, okay, so this person is having this problem. Well, guess what? Probably about 10,000 other people like you have figured out the same thing. So coming back to the original question of, okay, where to start? Yes, if you have an idea, just share it and figure out, like, okay, what other people are thinking about it. The more information you have, the better refined your idea is going to get. And then you would be able to figure out, okay, whether this idea is good enough to get to the next level of execution. And aligned with that is, okay, if you don't execute, the idea is absolutely worthless. So if you think it's a good idea, and if you think there's like viability of making something happen, might as well just go ahead and do something about it. But this execution doesn't have to be like a lot of coding. No, just do an MVP. It doesn't even have to be. It can as easily as it could be as easily as, you know, drawing something on a A4 paper and showing people, hey, look, okay, this is what I did. What do you think about it? That's good enough of MVP. And then you do iterative development on that. And that's how you would get to a place that it would make sense. And the last thing I have to tell you is that, okay, fail fast, fail cheap. The quicker you fail, the cheaper you fail, the amount of learning that you have, you can actually apply to multiple different things. So, yeah.
Thanks. So just based on certain things that Aloka mentioned, I'll go back to Miller, because when Miller was sharing his story, he mentioned about how they share their idea as well as how they fail fast. So just to touch upon a bit on that, Miller, the moment you identify the localized problem, and I also want to touch upon this validating the problem also. So where did you start about having these discussions, and whom are the people that you talk to start off this discussion with?
Right. So again, I want to just piggyback on what Alok said. So as I mentioned in the first session, so we think that as an accelerator, we didn't know what is mean by an accelerator or a startup program. Like these days, now it's very vibrant, right? So we compete on a hackathon. That's all we know. You know me, right? So we compete in hackathon all the time. So that's how it started. But when that hackathon was very different. We access real people with who really deal these issues in the ground. So the people who are from the community, they own their own farms and so on. So then only they realize, okay, they voted us. Yes, this is a real problem. We wanted to get this product on. But that validation was just maybe 30, 50 people. That's why we failed within 6 months, because that's all the validation we did. Okay, we won and there is an investment. Why don't we start? This is what the entire idea is all about. So the backup plan we had, like we all want to be engineers in another company, but there's an opportunity comes in. So always there's an opportunity. Statistically talking about, even we need 200,000 people in the ground as IT graduates. But so there's an opportunity always. Why can't we take this shot? And it's someone else's money, right? So we being a little bit of on that side also. We started and the validation part was the biggest mistake what we did. So early days only, as you said, coming from an idea. It was on the very first company would be the thing which come from an idea. Now all our startups, all our pivoting companies, like we have 3 companies under SenseMate right now. So all these companies are not starting from ideas. So that's the maturity of startup when it's grown a little bit. Now it's all about market and demand and validated requirement. Make sure there is a need for this product. So before that, it's just an idea and concept. So that might be a leapfrog for many startups. If you identify an option, you can take on that. That's the easiest part. At the same time, as Alok said, at least we shared that to someone else, and we got like at the 50 people said yes. Then we got like it validated for minimum of 3 million rupees. So that was the success of it. So, and if you are starting something completely weird and completely new and it's never occurred in this world, probably there is no requirement for it. Even your neighbor is not looking for that solution. If you are come up with something, the possibility of having the same idea was 1 in 8 billion. There are 8 billion people out there. They might come up with the same idea. So your chance of having this idea, it's not unique all the time. So protecting ideas, nothing can do with it. Just keep it as a secret unless it's become an execution. So right. So that's the important part. So ideas won't make any sense until the market says yes, and you're supposed to have a vision, the pathway, and how much the demand market are looking for. We didn't realize that early on, being honest. It's not the plan when we started. We getting in and failed phase first, and it was a very successful failure. Within 6 months we bankrupted. But we had that backup saying like, yes, this is a product, might not use for right now because there are people validated. So there's a demand for it, but not now. So, but then only we think about what is demand, and it's not a unique product. But we started as a second product, the polar one, which utilized by all the blue chips, are not a unique product. It's a very minimalistic scenario where you can monitor temperature and humidity in a cold room environment or a reaper trucks or a reaper container. That's all. Nothing else. Temperature monitoring. Even a kid with the Arduino can do that within 15 minutes at this moment. Maybe in 2014, it was maybe people don't know about Raspberry Pis and Arduino, and we started to build PCBs. So that time it might be something, but now it's nowhere near. So time updating your concept and market demands very, very rapidly. So that's the ultimate scenario. On this point, the problem is change. If you're protecting an idea for a very long time, if you're opening up again, maybe in another 2 years, it's already obsolete. So make sure you do the market study and starting something, but failing it's not a problem. Always chin up, because there are 7 billion people who didn't try this already. So it's always chance of getting in, and happy to be pivot. If there is a pivot which is C positive, happy to do that anytime.
Great. Thanks a lot for again highlighting on this, sharing the idea perspective and talking actually with your real customers, which will be really beneficial for most of the undergraduates. Because sometimes, like even some people, they are confused. Should I share my idea in hackathon? Is it okay if I share it with multiple panels? And sometimes even in the judge panel or the mentors, they are trying to like keep this as a secret. But at the end of the day, like they are not even putting certain effort to get it to the execution. So because recently one place that I noticed is the person only saying like I want like just share ideas, not to execute. Likewise, since you touch upon another aspect about knowing what you exactly do, you started like few years back. Arduinos and all these devices might not have been a common thing, which they now are. So I want to ask from Migara, since they started on a certain STEM side of electrical product from the initial certain products that they've been doing, and since they've diverted to it, what kind of research you had to do, and how do you actually get into this competitive global market? Because when you actually create the electronic device, it's not only for Sri Lanka, and you are competing with the bigger players, and even the very same examples that we mentioned, Arduino or Raspberry Pi even kind of become competitors. So how do you actually like understand this tech and understand your market, and where exactly you find this balance about understanding the market and excelling in your tech side?
Yes, thank you for that question. So basically, when it comes to our product, I think while we are developing the early prototypes, what we did was we studied the competitive products, and of course by that time, since we were studying subject areas, we have used most of those products, so we knew what were the elements in most of those products. And while we have that experience, we searched in other forums over the internet, asked from the users what sort of drawbacks that they observe in those products. Plus, soon we realize now we are Sri Lanka, we are not a nation that is very strong at developing electronics, right? When it comes to manufacturing. So some regions in the world, they have very fast cycles of producing electronics. So basically, if you have a product, they can replicate it and mass produce it overnight. So none of the stuff that you are making is like rocket science stuff. So basically, those things can be replicated very easily. So what we realized was basically we cannot compete just on electronics on a circuit board. So that's why we thought of developing this development board plus the software integration, cross compatibility with other platforms, and our own cloud IoT software. And we developed a version of Scratch for our product. And where we wanted to place MagicBit when we were doing that research was, we found that there are very low end products with low features, and there are some products with high end. There's no product in the market, even globally in part of the world, where students can start very simply learning about electronics, IoT, robotics, things, and step by step advance complex solution development and learning some complex stuff and doing some of them on their own. So that is the gap that we wanted to fill our product MagicBit, and that's why we were trying to develop this product, software, the hardware, the mobile apps, content. So it is not just a single hardware product. Then we are presenting a value-added product to the user in the country. And to come up with that action, we studied the product and we took the good side of most of the competitors, sometimes by making our product cross-compatible with them. And also we studied how they have positioned their products, how they have packaged their product, and what are the features available, what are the features missing. So then we compare competitive products and sometimes hardware platforms, software platforms, their content. So I think that is the learning curve we went through to fill that gap and find our position and make it a competitive product in that space. And yeah.
Great. Thanks for that insight, Nigara. So now I want to move to Buddhishan, because unlike most of the product startup moving in the service industry, and that is a bit of a different game rather than we playing in the product game. And you also, when you are mentioning about your keynote, initial Ignite, you mentioned from university time onwards, you started freelancing in different projects likewise, which is a quite common practice nowadays with the price of platforms like Upwork, Fiverr and all. Most of the undergraduates, if they are quite competitive in terms of their technology stack, they do start on these freelancing activities likewise. However, doing freelancing and making that to a business level with like now even 40 plus employees, that's a big journey. And how exactly we move into such kind of area, because even though like you are doing as service products, you can't do all things. You have to, at the end of the day, select one area which from your side, I think you are mostly in the digital transformation and AI side of it. So how exactly we do this transition from being a freelancer to actual business?
Thanks for that question, Dhammika. And I think that's a very good question, timely question. I didn't do freelancing during my university life, but after starting 𝐹𝑘𝑜 Labs, when we wanted to start 𝐹𝑘𝑜 Labs, we didn't have anything to do. So where to start? Obviously, the best and easier way is to start with freelancing. So that's why we started with freelancing. So when it comes to freelance, of course, we used Upwork and Fiverr. And the secret behind that, I think, is the quality that we delivered and the nature that how we handle that client. Especially, so when it comes to an client, and if we reach beyond their expectation, they eventually come back not only with another project, come back with another clients. So that's the secret, I think, we converting from the freelance into a small business. So small business and into a growing is a different story. So I think initially what we did was, since we didn't have anything to do, we didn't have any clients, or we don't have any relatives or any connections internationally, what we had to do was to freelance, of course. And with that clients, so when we have a couple of projects, then it's case studies for us. So we showed that case studies to different other clients, and we pitched ourselves that we are capable of doing this. So when these things are continuously happening, we could eventually grow it up. At the same time, so we were building a great team inside the company. So we treated the employees, the team members, as sort of friends, family sort of culture. Eventually what happened was everyone was on the same page. Everyone was trying to improve themselves. Everyone was trying to improve ourselves, which made a growing factor for us. And eventually within less than 3 years, I think 2, and in December we'll be celebrating our 3rd anniversary. Within 3 years, I think we could grow it up to a 40 people team. The success, I think, is the how we delivered, how we catered the clients. And I think I want to mention as a startup, since we had 3 founders, I think the stress that mentioned, the problems mentioned by the others, Aloka and Miller, of course, we had diluted because we had 3 people with the same passion, same mindset. And when there's a stress and when there's a problem, we had 3 members. And that, I think that was a fortunate factor for us. And yes, that's how we actually improved ourselves and got to this kind of situation.
Great, thanks. Since you mentioned about co-founders and all that concept, I'm going back to Migara, since he mentioned about like initial idea of this product design came from another co-founder, and even with your crowdfunding program, as I know, like the co-founders, like having that co-founders, it really helped. So from your opinion, like what is this power of co-founders, and how exactly and where exactly you find them?
I think that's an interesting question. First of all, I think when we are partnering with someone to start an organization or to go for a startup, I think first we have to realize it's a very long journey. So the initial co-founder should have that bond, share the same passion, plus they have the capacity and capability as well. So I think since most of you are in the entrepreneurial mindset, I think you might have in Shark Tank or in Dragon's Den, when startup or company founders go to the investors and they present the idea. Always the investors ask them whether if it's a tech product, which one of your co-founders are from a tech background. So basically, if we are developing a tech product, definitely one of our co-founders should have that. Plus, I think the value addition from each co-founder for the startup should be very distinct. So if we can have such co-founders, it will be a great thing. For example, now even in our startup, I think now we are coming from an engineering background and we are coming from that industry background. But I think, let's say, in a hypothetical case, if 2 of our co-founders are from the product side, one from the marketing side, one from, let's say, digital marketing side, then I think that combination would have been much more powerful. So likewise, I think the value addition from each co-founder would be very distinct. Plus, I think now when it comes to our story, all 4 of us are very good friends, and I think we have been known each other for like 12 years. So that sort of understanding, and I'm not saying that you have to know a person for like 10, 12 years to start something with them, but I think what it indicates, having the mutual understanding is much more important than everything else. Because then I think when the skill set matches and that understanding is there, I think then you have the capacity to develop something from the beginning. If it doesn't work out, you can pivot because you have the skill set, plus you have the understanding. My experience, I think the skill set plus the understanding are the 2 pillars that will be holding the initial co-founders. Plus, there could be some additional factors like the passion and maybe some value addition from them likewise.
Great. I think even Buddhishan mentioned how about this understanding help, because he mentioned like how his co-founder was the one next to his index number in the university, and how that friendship make this far. I want to go back to Aloka, because in most of our university system, like with our degrees that we follow, we don't have this major minor kind of a sector like in other countries. So it's most of the time, like if we know engineering, we know engineering at best. We have no understanding about management. We don't have this cross-cultural, cross-technology understanding or diversify understanding. So, but it's still like if you look at most of our universities, we have multiple departments, multiple faculties, which have these friends, and even now, like friends, they are around everywhere. It's not from your university, likewise. So to build a good team, what kind of aspects that you would demand, because you've been part of like a lot of accelerators likewise, and you've seen a lot of teams coming up with ideas and only like very less progress. So what kind of factors that you've seen in these good teams that you have noticed in different competitions likewise?
Okay, diversity, that's the biggest thing. So if the team has a lot of diversity, that actually helps a lot. So Mika was talking about it. He was talking about, okay, like if each of these founders have like different understandings of different areas. One has a technical understanding, one has a digital marketing understanding, so on and so forth. That's the sort of thing that actually allows a lot of the startups to achieve a lot more within a short period of time. One of the biggest problems that I'm seeing right now is most of the startups are actually started by engineers. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but the problem is when they keep doing things, so when they want to grow from whatever they are at right now to the next level, that's where the problems happen. Like, for example, imagine that you want to write an email, like a proper email to someone or one of your customers or one of your potential customers. If you don't come from a background where you have this really good customer relationship skills, then that's a problem that you're going to have. Invariably, what happens is, now if you're not comfortable doing something, you tend to procrastinate. You're like, yeah, okay, so let me just take a little bit of time. Let me just come to it later. So this let me come to this later usually takes about 1 day, 2 days. Sometimes it takes about 2 months before you actually go ahead and do that. That's a problem. Okay, so if you have the diversity within the team, you can actually allocate it. You can say, okay, Machan, I'm not good at writing emails. Can you write this email for me? Okay, so and you can delegate it to someone else. That person does it, and you're like, yes, let me do it. Or for example, if you don't understand anything about Google Analytics, and your other co-founder understands a lot about Google Analytics, or like he or she is really good at learning things really fast, you give them that task. You focus on the product development, and that person learns it and comes back and says, okay, look, this is how we use the JavaScript on Google Analytics to do things. This is how we use the tag manager, so on and so forth. And then you're like, yeah, let's do it. Okay, so let's do these things. And those things are really important. And it would be also important, not only the diversity, but if you can, I mean, right now, because of COVID and all that, we can't do it. But before COVID, before 2019, one of the biggest things I suggested to a lot of the startups that came for mentorship or whatever is to find a bit of money, go to Singapore, stay there for about 3 days, understand what the hell is going on there. And it's not hard. Okay, so thankfully for Sri Lankans, we can actually go to Singapore without like on arrival visa, right? So you definitely will need to put together maybe about 50,000-60,000 rupees back then. Right now things have changed, but put together 50,000-60,000 rupees. You go there, you basically speak to some of these startups and figure out like what these guys are doing. That knowledge is important. That exposure is important. That inspiration is important. And this is one of the biggest things that has happened to me. Like, okay, you go to Singapore. You pull on your Google Maps and it says that, okay, in 2 minutes or in 1 minute, your bus is going to come. And you look at the road, there's absolutely no bus, but all of a sudden, from a cross road, the bus comes and you're like, okay, this works. Okay, so that's massive amount of inspiration. Or you go to the Changi airport and they have this really beautiful, amazing sort of museum sort of thing that they have done. You go there, you realize what they have done, and like we are all very inquisitive, right? Okay, so they have this amazing like 3D like I don't know what to call it even. So they have this amazing thing that there is, And I was like figuring out, okay, where this light is coming from, just to figure out, okay, how this works. And when you have that inspiration, you look at it and you come to Sri Lanka and you try to apply it. This is really important. So diversity and inspiration are two key things I would really love the Sri Lankan startups to have.
Great. I think this also leaves us in a good point to ask about Miller's Europe journey, because he mentioned like they were in a credit low scenario and putting their all cash to this kind of experience. I'm pretty sure they've learned a lot, otherwise they wouldn't have even think about putting that risk. Miller, what exactly were like things that you did on this Europe trip that you mentioned, and what were the like main learnings that you had?
So it was a opportunity from Spirelation. So 10 teams, we represent the Sri Lankan booth in Barcelona. So that's one of the largest technology workshop or technology conference you can find, Mobile World Congress. Around 17,000 people on 4-day program they participated. It happened in 2 different mechanisms, like 4 years from now, and then follow up a 2 days program for Mobile World Congress. So it's a completely 5 days. I said like we had like 300,000 rupees. We learned financial management on that time. Like we stayed 16 days, including the flight fare, accommodation, food, and everything. We covered 16 days. Went to 8 countries throughout Schengen, and we had balance in bank when we are coming back to Sri Lanka. So this happened in a very interesting manner. First of all, that journey itself very interesting. Like we travel all the day. After the program, we travel all the day. I like backpackers. Get into KFC or something for lunch, and we stay in night through a bus from one country to another country. We take a bus, so it's like 7 to 8 hours. So we can sleep in the bus. Next day morning, we will in another country. Probably we stayed like 3 times, 3 occasions, but we traveled 8 countries in 16 days. So that's how the entire travel program happened. It was pre-planned by the team because we didn't have anything to do, because no clients. We had a product which is showcased, and that's how it happened. But we learned a lot. So fortunately, as Alok said, so if you went to Singapore, it's just one country and the experience you can get. But we got close to like around 90 to 100 countries they're representing their products. But very early days of crypto and the expansion of blockchain was learned on those days. So people exchanging cryptocurrency on that particular forum in 2016-17 period. So it's a very common thing for them, but it was not there for us at all. Sri Lanka, I don't know how many e-commerce platform accepting crypto so far. So these are some of the learnings, like how far ahead they are thinking about the future and how they are dependent on technology. They are respecting technology for a particular purpose. Still, we had that point. So we compare the price point for the technology in the business point of view versus a human person doing that exact same thing. So that's the biggest problem for developing countries, where the labor cost is low. And so if we say like we have come up with a paperless architecture, like without papers, you can document everything through technology. So it could be an ERP or an IoT platform or something. Then they will replace with a person. I am paying 30,000 for this guy, or 20,000 for an intern for 6 months. That guy can do it. So your technology price point is supposed to be below that. Then only it could be sellable. So adaptation of technology completely depend on pricing more than efficiency or competitive advantage or globalization. So it's all about mindset. As rightly Alok said, if that mindset will be definitely changed, if you go somewhere and meet some diverse people and products and entrepreneurs, you have a different mindset, like how they think, what kind of expansion they thought about. So that's what we learned. So we built technology for northern province of Sri Lanka when we started. That's where we failed. So we didn't thought about, after we reach out this 300,000 farmers in northern province, what we do after that. Is that enough for us? That decision was not there for complete 8 months of period when we sitting for nothing. And when we go into Europe, we found a company called Motolib, still one of our competitor. So that company start from Canada. That guy talking about if you are doing AgTech, how we can collaborate and bring this technology to Sri Lanka. So a Canadian company thinking about that aspect, and they don't want to miss a small island like Sri Lanka in their map. So whatever happens, whatever the project they have come up with as a startup, they have a mindset of thinking global. It's not meant for my product. Their total addressable market is the entire world. So we have the country is surrounded by ocean, and we have an island mentality. We think very, very narrowed. And my total market was Sri Lanka. That's what the biggest problem most of our entrepreneurs have. So someone who break through this and find the opportunity globally, then it will be a different shop. So even today we realize that. So we do different pricing. So that pricing, being honest, close to 20 to 30 times higher than the Sri Lankan price point. The same technology, same thing, but 20 to 30% high, 30 times higher price point when it goes to US or Canada or Australia. So that's the scale you have thinking global in any product line. So we got that exposure and some technology robustness. So we got some good network and friends. So at the same time, that's working right now. To give closing down this remark with one point, we met Mr. Bernard Chinnaya. He was Sri Lankan. He was the Citibank managing director that time, 2016 period, 17 period. So he came to Sri Lankan podium because he was Sri Lankan, but he was staying in UK. But that guy supposed to be like Sundar Pichai at the moment. We all need to celebrate because he was the managing director of Citibank International, a company which is working more than 120 countries around the world. One of the largest brand, I think top 12 brands so far, like after Google and all those things, one of the top 12 brands so far. And he was the managing director of it. So we met that person on that day. He came to us, he talked in Tamil, and everything happens well. When we are raising investment in 2018, so 2020, we just simply send an email to all the people. He was the first guy who responded. Within 24 days, we closed the round. So maybe a record, like it takes usually a company to guys who are want to start something. After your presentation, it takes like 6 months of due diligence and evaluation and all those things. Aloka can definitely recommend that. I mean, can endorse that. This investment round happens on 24 days, starting from the email and close down, they paid, and the IIA account money transaction happens on 24 days. That connection happened by visiting this particular point. For them, it's a fantastic story. So we thought like this is an investment, we didn't make anything, but in terms of knowledge gain, finally it's financially turned out. So I talk about the financial amount, what we raised from him. And ICT told me that was lesser than what they invested for the entire program for that particular year, for all 10 companies and investment for all those things. So we recovered that. For Sri Lanka, we recovered that with one blow. So this could be happening. Definitely the diversity internally in your team, as you rightly touched the point. I always talk to my university where we have all the faculties in the country, from medical to engineering, law to management, all the aspect what a startup looking for, but we never collaborate internally. So every single forum I talk to my university, I talk about it. Internally also you're supposed to have a team which has diverse knowledge base, diverse point of thinking. Externally also you're supposed to learn from others. I mostly learn from my competitors. As I said, remote only, always following them. I'm following plenty of competitors, their pathways, thought, what are the competitions and what are the areas I need to looking for. So diversifying yourself and knowledge and your network is ultimately important for a startup to grow and scale globally.
Great points, and glad to know that like you managed to recover the whole 10 teams expenditure with one contact, and even that is within 1 month. That is quite of a good journey.
It's I have like 24 days, never happens. Never happens. It's in 6 months.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just to touch into a bit of a different angle, this is I want to talk about failures also, because most of us, as even Aloka mentioned, we procrastinate a lot, being afraid for that failure. We we are quite afraid to fail, and even as of a country, even from the society side of it, like failure is like biggest problem that you have. Is even for like your parents and all that, the moment you say I want to start a business, the first question, what happened if that didn't work out? So I mean, out of all the questions, that is a usual question that we get, and we are quite afraid of failures in a lot of ways. So Miller touched upon like what kind of things that led to his failure, and how like things like pivoting and all that he learned out of that. I want to ask this again from 𝗏𝗽𝗃, because even from your university side times, you started a startup called 𝗏𝗪𝗡, which you mentioned that didn't work out. So what were like your main failure points there, and what exactly you learn out from that?
Yeah, I think in 𝗏𝗪𝗡 actually we had a couple of two products. One is an AI-based healthcare product where it's a sort of a bathroom scale, where when you stand on top of that, we read that signals from the foot and try to predict some health parameters, especially related to heart problems. So actually, we won several startup awards, including Disrupt Asia in 2017, I think, and also some awards in the Commonwealth Health and all kind of these things. And back then, it was like, wow, this is kind of a good startup to go ahead. But we had several challenges. So as I spoke, it was on healthcare. So if it's easy to get an MVP done, but into a commercialization level, so it has to take into several aspects. I think Mikara knows this better than me. In terms of electronics, it's very hard to do. So if you need to print a PCB, so it needs to be sent to China and get it to Sri Lanka, and then it takes 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And if there's anything wrong with that, its entire cycle is gone, and you need to do it again and again. So that's the hardware challenge that we failed in terms of hardware practicing. And there was another challenge, like since it was on a healthcare space, so to get on commercially accepted, you need to have a certain acceptance from certain organizations. For example, in US, there's a whole sort of challenges that you need to take HIPAA and ISO compliance. There are plenty of compliance when it comes to healthcare products. So if you are predicting something related to your body, it's very difficult to get it approved by these organizations. And also with this product, there was another challenge. It's like, even we validated that to a small period of users. So to get to accurate results when it comes to a larger scale, larger group of population, it's challenging because it needs a certain set of research. For that research, actually, it takes a lot of time than we anticipated. Actually, I ended up doing a master's research based on that research, just to get ahead with that product and go to that into a commercialization level, but never couldn't finish all three aspects. I think these three aspects failed that product. Even though I started doing the research, but didn't continue that one because we started 𝐹 Labs in a different segment. And regarding the other product, actually, it's a HR platform. It's HR platform that we can allow their companies to recruit easily. So we did a fantastic job building all the features. Everything was there. And as mentioned, the previous award, actually, we won 200,000 rupees that day with the prize as the prize money. And with that prize money, so there was a career fair in our university. And with that HR talent platform that can enable the HR people to do their task easy. That's the idea. And it has all the fancy UIs and everything was done. And with that 200,000, we sponsored that event. With all the money, we sponsored the event, the career fair event, so that the HR persons who are coming to that that particular event might be interested. So we thought that everyone will be interested, but no one got interested. So like that, we came to know that even if we build a product without getting the input from the market before developing it, I think that's the worst thing that you can do. That's how it failed actually. When we researched then again why we failed, actually because there's no need like that. Because if we have thought about what's the need before developing that product into a sort of that level and investing our all money into a event like that, I think that's something that we can learn. I'm not an expert about product development startups, but that's something that somebody can fail actually. Yeah, those are the things that we learn from making mistakes.
Great. I think like having this sensible understanding about like doing the market research and even understand the customer, that's a quite vital point which we didn't understand at that stage.
Exactly. Yes.
Mingara, like from your side, what is kind of the biggest failure that you have so far, and what kind of learning you have from it?
To our story, I think one of the healing points in our story is I think we kind of took some time and somewhat dragging things because of the fund issues and some maybe we didn't have the enough workforce to do some tasks because of those things. But later what we realized was the cost of that would be the technology is transforming rapidly, and again, when we are introducing technical products these days, there's a limited time span for that. So like when it comes to a product which deals with technology, I think it has a lifespan about 2 to 3 years maximum, and probably it'll be around 1 to 2 years nowadays. So I think when we are doing that sort of products, I think we could have done it if we have come to the current stage much more faster than we did. I think we could have been in a better position. Plus, as Mila mentioned earlier in our journey, I think we also focused on Sri Lanka, developing, transforming the community in Sri Lanka. I think there's nothing wrong with that, but definitely thinking of the foreign markets, how we can position it for the other regions, and focusing that at the beginning would have been a better thing for us, even for us, because as he correctly mentioned, there's more prospects when it comes to the economic side of your business, plus the community development side, or maybe the savviness of some regions is very high. So I think focusing on the other markets from the beginning, and maybe developing the product and other things more quickly would have been the best thing for us. And I think weaknesses from our side were we took some time to do that, and maybe because it was a learning cycle for us as well, I think that's why we took some time. So yeah, I think those were some of the challenges we faced.
Great. I think like when we actually look at certain kind of problems that we faced, being it like not understanding the exact market, or having not having that exposure, or not having that basic financial understanding, or even can be like not having a proper plan in terms of the whole business, like where exactly you should put money on, what kind of drawbacks that you have likewise. So, but this is like another question that I noticed with some of the participants also asking like how should I start this education journey, because there are a lot of like boot camps, different other programs, incubation programs happening. So I want to direct this question to Aloka, because since you've been part of multiple programs like Startup Weekend, Startup 𝐿_𝑥 likewise, now like there are like a lot of different components when it comes to startup, that those can be like design thinking or figuring out the business model, MVP, customer discovery, likewise. So where should a person start, and how these kind of programs support this early startup? Because 5 years back we didn't had this much of programs. We had only like a spiralation and few things in the country, but now like we have a lot of things. So how can a student utilize that, and where should they start?
Okay, so one of the good things that's happening right now is, programs like this. So we are imparting knowledge with a lot of people who can perhaps take the knowledge and do something with it. When we started, we did not have any of these things, and this is perhaps one of the reasons why we made a lot of these mistakes as well. So if someone wants to start learning about starting a business, where should they start? One of the first things that I can tell everyone is, don't take Silicon Valley as an example. It's a really bad place to start. Because the situation in Silicon Valley is very different to the situation that we are having in Sri Lanka. And of course, our problems are like very, very different. Now, one of the biggest things that all of us have to understand is, most of the products and services we are talking about are essentially directed towards the middle class. You expect that the people would have the money to spend to buy the products or the services that you have. Within the current Sri Lankan context, or for that matter, within the Asian context or the African context, that is perhaps like a really bad place to start off. Because if you look at the number of people who can actually spend a lot of money on some of these things that we are talking about, the market size actually goes down quite drastically. So let's take Sri Lanka, for example. Right now, our population is close to 22 million people. Out of that, only about 10% of the population is in the middle class. That's even a very generous sort of a guesstimate. So now your 22 million is now all of a sudden like 2.2 million. And even within this 2.2 million people, you are talking about a very small subsection. So if you are going to focus on, if you are thinking of maybe coming up with a marketplace, or if you are thinking of coming up with an application that perhaps can compete with, let's say, Uber or PickMe, that's probably not the way to go forward. I think especially the audience that we have here, what they should do is they need to figure out, where the problems are at, and of course, how to solve these problems in a scalable way. Now, let me expand the mindset a little bit. Now, yes, we are talking about Sri Lanka, but guess what? The socio-economic context that we are facing in Sri Lanka is common across a lot of the countries in Asia and Africa. You go to Myanmar, you go to Thailand, you go to Malaysia, you go to Indonesia, same story. On this side, you come to Bangladesh, Pakistan, same story, right? On the other side, you go to, let's say, Kenya or Tanzania or Nigeria, like a lot of these African countries, very similar socio-economic contexts. Now imagine if you can solve a problem for the base of the pyramid. Now you don't talk about the middle class. You go down and you try to solve a problem for the base of the pyramid. Now the base of the pyramid includes people who are probably earning less than $5 a day. The moment you think about it, the complexity of your solutions definitely need to go down. So Bila is working on agri-related products and services. Now imagine if you can come up with a soil monitor or like a soil a tester for, let's say, $1. And that product has the capacity to change the lives of millions and millions of people in Asia and Africa. And that's a good problem to solve. It has a lot of financial viability. And guess what? You can go to maybe UNDP United Nations. So you can go to like a lot of other development agencies and say, hey, look, I have this product. I need to take it to different markets. Would you be able to help? They have massive amounts of grants. They can easily help you to take this product from Sri Lanka to multiple other countries in the world. And that's the sort of mindset that you need to have. So in terms of where you should start, I think you have to start thinking from a completely different lens. You have to like start coming out of like have a little bit of a helicopter sort of a view and understand, okay, what's actually happening in the world, and then try to figure out, okay, how my knowledge can be aligned with all these different things. And then you will quickly realize that the tech angle of it, or the tech aspect of it, is just one. There are more important things like business development, marketing, sales, understanding, strategy, all of this. And you're not going to be able to do this on your own. Bring people in, bring mentors, get some help, and start things in a way that makes sense. Oh, just one last thing. One of the biggest things that people would do is, if you take your product and say, hey, look, okay, I have this product. What do you think about it? They'll easily agree with you, because that's the easiest thing to do. Like, imagine that I have a product. I'm like, okay, yeah, I created this really cool, smartphone that can be charged in 5 minutes. And you go to your people, your friends, they're like, okay, so this is a great thing. Okay, so let's just work on it. But you now, based on that feedback, you create the mobile phone. You spend like millions of rupees. You take that phone and go to the same people who said they would buy it. They're like, sorry, Machan, I bought iPhone. So no need of the charges in 5 minutes. So you are done. So biases, you have to be very, very careful of. But, summing it up, have a bit of a larger worldview. Don't take examples from places like Silicon Valley, because our contexts are very different. And always think about how to take products from Sri Lanka to maybe like a larger market from the get-go.
Great. Interesting fact. This remind me of the cook mom test. If you ask from something like from your mom, they'll always like agree and they'll be supporting. But I think like this is something that most of you all can give a search on YouTube, and there's even a book called Mom Test, which you can have a look at about actually like talking to the customers and getting to know their real aspect instead of giving them answers to make you happy. Since you touched upon the bottom of the pyramid as well as like focusing on these impact related things, I want to touch upon middle on two aspects. One, like you've been part of a lot of hackathons. I think like even how we met in 2013, that is with the Jaffna IT Week, and then like afterwards throughout our university, we met in a lot of hackathons, I think. So with that, what I want to ask is now the fact that Alok mentioned, focusing on something bottom on the pyramid. Now you've been part of like things like Climate Accelerator, SDG Impact Accelerator, likewise accelerators, and from that you even managed to get certain of your products to external markets. So can you share a bit experience along that line, maybe like validating the point that Alok also mentioned?
Definitely, Dhammika. That's a very important point Alok touched on, because so when we are starting, we didn't think about the SDG part of it. It's we thought about very normal conditions, 6 million farmers in Sri Lanka, farmer numbers in Sri Lanka, and we have a huge opportunity. And then we realize farmers are not able to pay because their daily wage is very small and it's very hard to get money out of smallholders. Then we pivot to B2B environments like FPOs and agribusinesses and so on. So identifying, if you're working with low income audience, but they are very large in terms of, it could be farmers or it could be low power working environments. So their capacity and the numbers are very large. It's all about a margin based business model you can build. It's all about what could be the business model and what could be the pricing structure. It's very, very unique for each and every company. So that definitely a company need to figure out from their side, whether I'm getting the payment from an individual who have a very low income, but I'm optimizing something, I'm getting a proportion of the optimization. That might be a business model, but you can have a cumulative business model by giving something cumulatively to a group of consortium and get a one-shot investment kind of a mechanism. So there are multiple business models for that. But if you're considering about the SDG, if you don't know about the SDG for many of you, so SDG is a UN-based concept where by 2030, the most important 17 problems global facing. It's not for your country, your location, it's for the entire world. So they're talking about the food, the requirement for the hunger-related environment, gender equality, they're talking about climate change, they're talking about the ocean protection, decent work opportunity for everyone, so justice and many things. They're talking about total 17 concepts. So there are huge amount of investments given by global leaders and global organizations and countries to support this entire goal. Climate change alone, every year there is an investment of $1 trillion allocated by G8 countries to support the world. So this was agreed on Paris conference on climate change related environment. So it's a huge opportunity. So we definitely tapping into this opportunity because we are into farmers ecosystem, we are economic building for the farmers environment, and climate change related ecosystem we are working on. Producing more with less resource utilization, less chemical, less water, that kind of an ecosystem. So we fall into few categories of SDG, which allow us to access plenty of global awards. So our first award, you don't believe, we before registered the company, we got the award. In 2017 end, we registered the company, but with the concept when it's validated to John Keel's Innovation Accelerator, we get into /, Global in Finland. So it's a 1-week program, / Global Impact we presented in Finland, and it was a fantastic opening, and still we have good network and friends who continuing with us. So then we won Climate Launchpad, which is in Edinburgh. Then we won recently, we get into an accelerated program. So that's one of the interesting story. If you are focusing on impact oriented ecosystem, it's a global concept, global opportunity. So that's the problem. People talking about warnings alone. So global warming happening, ice melting, ocean floors are rising. It's all warning. The solutions are always come from entrepreneurs and startups. So that's where the opportunity comes in. So there are people who giving warning. There are people who really worry about it and they have money and they really want to invest on the people who are try to solve that. So to getting into that network is highly important. So Sri Lanka is one of the heart center, because if you take the climate index, we are number 2. Globally, we don't make all this pollution, but the neighboring countries and neighbors are doing things which is affecting our country. So we are in the climate risk index number 2 after China and all those industrialization. But this makes plenty of opportunity internally and plenty of investment comes into Sri Lanka, where we need to make plenty of movements on this. So for an example, the largest climate smart agriculture investment from World Bank received by Sri Lanka, $140 million in one check for 3 years of climate-related environment, which is for a very small country like Sri Lanka. So those are some of the opportunities you can get involved and get access for these through a global network. Beyond the business-oriented ecosystem, the sustainability ecosystem, since there is a empathy and well-being, and since it's a global context, you can simply be a part of it, and you will represent yourself as a good person also. So that connectivity in a network of SDG is very easily could be happens. So as Alok said, we tap into plenty of opportunity here. So World Resource Institute in 2020, we get into the South Asian program and we got a grant. At the same time, we got access for, so through World Resource Institute only we get our Latin American partners. So we have an installation in Ecuador that's happened through that network. So at the same time, now we are talking to PepsiCo India, that's happening through them. So those type of things are opened up through these networks. And probably you saw in social media, we got access for Australian aid investment, it's like a grant to do 100 projects in Sri Lanka to initiate digital agriculture ecosystem in rural farming communities. So that project was completely funded by Australian Aid. So these are some of the openings where you will be on the network, you will be representing plenty of forum. There is no different, this is a problem. If you're talking about climate, it's a global problem for US to Sri Lanka without an issue. The context will be relevant for everyone. If you talk about gender equality, the context is relevant for every single country in the world. So you can be part of a bigger ecosystem, and if you are come up with a solution, a local solution for a local problem that can be replicated globally without any market study. Blindly, you can think about it as a global product. So that's the opening what this SDG and impact-oriented ecosystem have. Definitely, I believe this will be hyped for at least by 2030 until these SDG plans are over. Then again, they are not stopping from that. They plan for the 2050 program also, especially on the climate index side of it with the Paris Global. And so for next 25 years, we have a huge potential and investments comes into this domain, and build something local. Definitely, that's a replicatable option to go forward. So even if I exit from Synthagro, definitely my another company opening will be on this SDG around, because it's definitely an open market.
Great. Thanks for those points, Miller. Now I want to move into a bit of a different aspect where we actually want to talk about a bit of a talent and where you get this experience. I saw even some of the questions, some people asking about, like, there are many paths in IT industry that they can took in to get the knowledge, like should they actually like go for a foreign job or a local job likewise. So I want to ask this question from 𝗏𝘃, since because most of the undergraduates, like soon after we are done with the degree, the options that we look after is the highest salary, the biggest companies in the country likewise. But a bit away from that, like as you mentioned, you joined a growing startup at that age, which is ODOC. So how that experience helped you in actually cultivating your now startup 𝐹𝐺𝐻𝐿𝑒𝑣s?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Yes, people were during the graduation, and we had the social pressure, like everyone is going for jobs, and some people are going for PhDs, and some people are migrating. Everything is there. Everything was there except starting startups. So everyone was asking, why are you joining a startup, and why are you trying to start a startup? And yes, because ODOC was well-funded startup back then. I think it was funded US $1 million when I joined. And it was a small team, actually. It was around 20 people in a single room. So there was, I was working as a software engineer, of course, working on the iOS application. Even though I was in the engineering team, the marketing team, and the finance team, operations team, and also the founders were in the same room, in different tables, but in the same room. And then I can listen to the customer care, how they talk to the customers and how they pitch to different new clients, new doctors. Actually, it was a healthcare company, telemedicine company. So they talk to clients, like to hospitals and the doctors. I hear some they take, and there was some problems, how they tackle problems. I was there in the ground level experience as an engineer's point of view, and there were marketing people who were creating creatives, and they were discussing about how to get more reach into their posts and all. And founders were there discussing about the problems and how they tackle with the problems, and even they were very close with us, actually. They were sharing the thoughts with the discussions with the investors. So everything was there. So it was a great opportunity for me to learn about different aspects, the problems every day, the people face every day. And in 𝐹𝐺𝐻𝐿𝑒𝑣s Labs right now, we actually face a different problem every day. So we thought, I knew that it's the normal in a startup. When you're starting up, you don't know the question, the problem you're coming up the next day. So you don't know the answer again. So you'll have to find the answer there. So running a startup and growing to a certain level and growing accelerate that needs a sort of problem solving every day, different to different problems. So I think I got that exposure from ODOC. Yeah, that was a really good experience for me.
Great. I think like as you said, not all of the people are like to startups, but the experience that you can get, the exposure that you can get, and the understanding that you can get, that is quite important. Even if you think of even joining a startup, because even if you look at like some of the global reports in Sri Lanka, like the Startup Genome report, one thing that they highlight is Sri Lanka. They do have a quite good technical presence and technical talent in the country, but if you look at the startups, the experienced engineers working in the startups and things like that are quite low. The reason being not having that the whole sometimes it's cultural barrier from our homes and all that, like they don't motivate you to join a startup, to work for a startup. They always think of like all these big things and the other benefits that you would get from a bigger company rather than like focusing on this experience. The other side I want to touch, this is to Migara, because most of the time, like be it undergraduates, they want to like jump into startups way earlier. But as you mentioned, like you had about only after about like 6-7 years of working in the industry, and now with about like 8+ years of experience, now you are in a startup. So how it is different, and how does that experience that you gain from the industry helps you? And should we need to rush into the startups and all that?
I think that's a very valid question, and I think good for us. So I think it all depends on what you want to do in life, and basically what you want to achieve, and what you are trying to do. Because of course, when we graduate from a university, or let's say even though you don't go to a university, you want to do a job. So basically our mindset, our culture, and we were taught, and I think we were very much influenced to do a job. And I think we did buy a car, a house, right? Get married, right? So I think those were the targets set by our culture, and those were the things that we have seen what we should do. And I think even when it comes to the entrepreneurship side, I think sometimes people are misled by some. I think from my comment on, maybe if you want to buy a Mercedes or a BMW i8, I think that should not be the goal of becoming an entrepreneur. And so what I'm trying to say is, it's not about money. It's not about becoming famous, becoming a YouTube influencer, or starting to show off others. So I think it's all about what you want to do with your life. And for me, I think what I realized was at a later stage in my life, because when I graduated, I think I got hired by a company, I think maybe around 4 to 6 months before my graduation. So basically, I was getting paid even while I was an undergraduate, uh, and so I thought that it was a great thing, and I thought that I will have a remarkable corporate life, and in fact I did, and I enjoyed the benefits of the corporate in the corporate world, and salary and other for me, foreign tours. So I'm not saying that a job is a bad thing, or I don't think everyone has to become an entrepreneur, because I think when it comes to value creation, being a good employee in a company is also something that you can do really well. And if you can, most of the people at our age, we have to do a job, or we have to do business, or anything that we are doing right now, we have to do for like another 30 years more, right? So there's a long way to go for each and every one of us. So I think even in a job, what I have realized is we get to know a lot of people, and we get exposure to certain technology. We get exposure to management, and sometimes when it comes to me, I learned the financial side, or maybe reading a balance sheet, and learning the HR side of it, the marketing side of it, the sales side, because so I learned all these things in the corporate sector, working in the companies. So I think working in a company is not a bad thing, and it all helps, and it all depends on what you want to do. But whatever the thing you do, I think it's all about being keen to learn new things, developing new skills. Then only I think you can do whatever the thing you want in your life, and maybe that could be developing a new startup or a new company, or that could be even becoming the CEO in the current company that you're working. So I think that decision, because I know there's a lot of friends of mine who would love to pursue an idea of startup or a business, but I know personally they have some family commitments and they are not ready to do it. So I think each and every one of us has to take that decision based on the fact, weighing each and every factor in our life, the family commitments. For example, even convincing your parents, or maybe your family, your wife, that doing this thing is a better option, or I'm going to do this thing which is going to change the lives of others. Convincing that part, it takes time, it takes courage, and sometimes you won't be able to do that as well. So I think you have to account all these factors when you are trying to start something. And I believe it's not for everyone, but I don't think that even doing a job is a bad thing, because when we are developing startups also, we need good members. So one thing I would like to encourage the undergraduates here would be, now I think now there's a trend for undergraduates to go and explore the startups as well. Because earlier, what I thought was, even when it comes to us, we were looking for high packages in the corporate. So we were to the interviews, we select the one with the best package, right? So we select the best package, means highest amount of highest take-home salary, right? So that was the basic factor of selecting a job when it comes to an undergraduate. But I think when I look back now, what I realize is, when you are going for a job, I think what we have to understand is we should value the experience that we are getting. We should value the opportunities that we are getting, that we have. And I think your potential, you can reach your highest potential at a later stage in your life, even at a lower salary right now, by going into the correct position. That could be starting a new company, or maybe joining an early startup, because I have seen some people who have joined early stage startups for a job. They have got they sometimes got a stake in the company for taking the risk, and later on that's getting they got rewarded massively for that. And I think even what undergraduates need to know about joining an early startup is, sometimes you will have to do things out of your scope also. Plus, you will be associating the founders and the I think the business cycle of a startup or the company very closely. So then that will be good experience for you to explore something on your own as well. I think that is why these people can see that when the companies are becoming unicorns at a later stage, the first few members or the first employees of those companies, then they start some companies, right? That we have seen that happens multiple times. So I think that happens because all the early members of a startup, they gain this invaluable experience about developing a business and developing value and developing a product and taking to the market. So I think so those are the things that I would like to share, and you can maybe clarify if my answer was not clear. But I think that's all I wanted to say. And one more thing I think I would like to share is personally what I believe is we can earn a lot of money, but if we cannot pass something to the next generation, or maybe if we cannot create, if we cannot, it doesn't matter whether you can make a rocket to go to the moon if you cannot get it done by others. So basically, maybe you will realize it at a later stage in your life, because when we, unless we cannot work with the team and we cannot make others to do things for you, or maybe others believe in your idea and work with you to make that thing a reality, I think that will not going to work. Even whether you are a CEO of a company or whether you are a founder of a company, I think empowering others, making others do, and working with others is the best thing a person can do.
Great. Thanks for that point, Migara. So at the end of the day, whatever we do, we should enjoy doing that, and rather than like working for something, maybe if we work for a course or something like that, that will make things much better for us, and we can also gain on the learning experience side of it. Before we close up on, I want to touch upon one other area, and we have some questions also in this. And if we didn't talk about this in this forum, we'll have a lot of problems. The funding, the usual problem that most of the people ask, and even these questions I notice, if I am to start something, then where exactly can I find early stage funding likewise? So Aloka, since you've been part of like multiple programs in the startup ecosystem, can you highlight like what kind of opportunities we have currently in Sri Lanka for early stage funding for ideation level kind of startups?
Okay. Right. So in terms of ideation, in terms of early stage funding, the three programs that I can suggest is obviously Spiralation. I think Miller and Migara, both of you have benefited from that. So Ideation by ICTA is actually a really good program. The second one I can suggest is the Land Fund. So Land Fund is a 100 million rupee fund which invests in early stage startups. That's number two. And of course, UNDP has this program called HackerDev. So HackerDev is a social innovation camp, but if you get selected to be a part of the incubation program, you also get a funding component. So those are the three programs that I can actually mention about. I really wish that we had a lot more funding opportunities available. There are some funding opportunities available once in a while, but these are not consistent. These are the three programs that are like very, very consistent across the years. So that's what I can mention. And in terms of funding, now I also saw some of these questions, and they were asking about the funding requirements, right? What are the funding opportunities available, so on and so forth. Look, I mean, funding is not necessarily the be all and end all of everything that you do. Again, one problem about this funding angle is most of it actually comes from whatever that we are seeing in the Silicon Valley. The problem is that, okay, it's very easy for people to raise money in Silicon Valley because they understand the risk and the return of it. So they do understand that high risk leads to high return. Whereas in Sri Lanka, we don't have that. Most of our investors, unfortunately, their investment knowledge is quite lacking. And on top of that, I mean, if I take, let's say, 2 years back, most of the startup founders were competing with the fixed deposits. Because if a fixed deposit gives you about 10% or 12% return annually, a startup cannot compete with that kind of returns. Now the situation has changed. Now the startup founders are actually competing with the stock market. So if you invested in like Expo, like in January, and now you are getting like, like massive amounts of like 30 or 40%. I don't know because I don't invest in the stock market. You're getting so much of return out of the stock market investment. And if you're a startup founder, how the hell can you compete with returns like that? Because you can't. Okay? So, and then an investor would come along and say, okay, yeah, if I invested in Expo, I would have gotten this much of money. What can you do? And then if you're a startup founder, you're scratching your head like, okay, how can I compete? So my suggestion, like, if you want to do something, don't focus on the funding angle that much. We just focus on like finding a problem that's worth solving and find people who are willing to pay for it. And if you can find these two things, funding is going to be another requirement. I mean, if you get funding, fine. If you don't get funding, you're still like, you are earning revenue. And then out of that, you can keep building your business. And in Sri Lanka, multiple businesses that has done this. Like they haven't raised money. They just, focused on getting revenue, reinvesting the profit. And these guys have done so well. So that's my advice. If you want to raise money, or if you want some help, ideation, spiralation, land fund, and HackerDev. Those are the 3 programs that I can suggest. But if you don't fall into any of these programs, might as well just focus on like getting a product done and selling it, earning your revenue, and then reinvesting the profit back into the business.
Great. Thanks for that. Since you mentioned about like the bootstrapping and all that, I want to ask this from Buddhishan, since you mentioned like even at 𝐹 Labs, that's what you did, bootstrapping from the very beginning. And then another factor that I noticed in the question also about tapping into international markets, because as you mentioned in your Ignite, you mentioned 𝐹 Lab is now incorporated in Singapore, and with that also like you are tapping into another set of market, and that like you are reinvesting back to the company to grow into about like 40+ employees now. So how does that like whole bootstrapping the company and re-extending work, specifically given that your establishment in Singapore and all that?
Yes, for the first part of the question, Dhammika, since we are a service-based company, so we didn't actually focus on a product and get it then to the market. It was a bit easy for us to stay without having funded. So initially, since we had the initial couple of freelance projects, so we could break even the costs, and we could manage the costs, and we could actually survive. With that money being reinvested, gradually we got some revenue from big clients, and then we could actually go into a sort of scaled level. As Alok very correctly mentioned, so you don't need to wait for funding. So if we can do something right, it can be a service, it can be a product, so funding will come to you. Actually, people are now trying to fund us, but we don't really looking for only not funding, but also looking for some connections, maybe in international level. So as Alok mentioned, so you'll have to prove something, you have to deliver value for someone, and you can take that revenue and invest back into the company. So that's exactly what we did at 𝐹 Labs. Regarding the second part for your question, yes, in Singapore, actually, we work with Singaporean government, specifically the Singapore Health Ministry. So for that, so it's difficult for a local company, Sri Lankan company, to work because of these restrictions they have locally. So we had to register the company there. Before moving into Singapore, during my internship, I was in Singapore for 6 months. in an innovation lab in Singapore University of Technology and Design, SUTD in Singapore. So there I had the experience. I worked with several innovators and PhD researchers, and got several connections. Those connections helped me to helped us to get to that the clients in Singapore when we started 𝐹 Labs. So we managed to get that all the connections very in a way that we could get help from them when we are scaling up. Yes, when you incorporate a Singapore or some kind of a good market where startup cycle is promoted, well supported, it's easy because when it comes to payment, so in Sri Lanka, so receiving PayPal and Stripe, all kind of these payment gateways, it's a bit difficult, but in Singapore it's easier. So there are when there's a business in Singapore, it's easy to convince people that this company is a trustable company. So we have that advantage when we are growing, scaling up, because to convince the government, the Singaporean government is not an easy task to because they have their all kind of regulations. They are very strict in nature. So we had to incorporate our company in Singapore, and with that mandatory requirement, actually we could reach to other countries like Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia and all, with the presence of Singapore. Yes, so with the presence of Singapore, actually it's easier for you to reach other international markets as well in Europe, or it can be Europe or it can be US, because of the presence in Singapore. Yeah, that helped really a lot. And yeah.
Great, thanks. Since you also touched on like as a startup, you are also looking at these different kind of other network partners, like sometimes more than funds. I want to touch upon Miller because as Sri Lanka, one thing that we complain a lot is the brain drain that we are having as a country. But if you really look at the one pro side of it is we now have a good diaspora outside the country who can like actually support back, because they now like they are in quite good positions likewise. So Miller, like as a startup, you have utilized this in multiple locations. Can you actually tell us like how exactly we can get help from these other external diaspora community that we have who like were in the country and now like are around the world?
Definitely. So in terms of diasporas, they went in a period where the war happens. Then now we have the recent diasporas after 1990s, the last 30 years, pretty much like for status. So they just want to land up in an environment. So around 70s to 90s, it might be on because of they migrated to be due to war. But all these people are in very good position. So there are forums we participate. So thanks to 𝗏 again. So especially I was more connected towards the Tamil diasporas who went during the war period and so on, because 𝗏 is more connected. So first of all, we connected to them, and there are forums. Sri Lankan professionals forums, and there are professional networks available. So we getting them through LinkedIn and getting through them, and local networks have global connection. That's one of the main area. So especially there are local forums. So they connected with. There are PhD forums also, like students who studying there. They connecting with other. They working on various sectors. Including Apple to Intel, everywhere they're working on. So I participate on a forum called Sri Lankan Professional, I think SLAP or something. I'll get back to you on this. So that forum basically have huge list of PhD graduates. So that's a sector of Sri Lankan diaspora. They're moving towards education purposes globally, mostly to US and UK. So that networks now working on different ecosystems with well-known brands. So they are connecting aggressively. So whoever going from Sri Lanka, we had that connection always. So they always want to, more than they want to come back, they want to just give it back. So that kind of mentality is there. It doesn't matter whether Tamil or Sinhala, that's always there from our people. So as I said, my investor is a diaspora. The connection we made because it's a Sri Lankan podium. He came to the podium and he was one of the keynote speaker on that event. Came to the podium, we didn't know there is a Sri Lankan presenting on Mobile World Congress. So that guy came, did a presentation on 𝐸𝑧𝐝𝐵H. 𝐸𝑧𝐝 means that's the time where the forex trading and all getting picked up and electronic money getting picked up. So he did a presentation on that, how the banking sector preparing. So he just came to the podium and talked to all 10 of us, and eventually that connection happened. So they're willing to help you out in any form. So without expecting anything, they're willing to spend you minimum of 2 hours in a month. That works a lot. So currently working with people who work in Amazon, Intel, and Microsoft. So it's very hard for us to work for Amazon or Intel or Apple. That's not possible, right? So they have their own team. There are plenty of things to work on, but they have colleagues. And they started startups and companies. They will have working environment. At the same time, they have networks who supporting other companies and organizations. So we get plenty of attentions from that kind of an ecosystem. So more than forums, individual connection works very, very well for us. Second thing would be the forum. So forum, it happens in a way. There are groups have group forums, especially with the COVID period. It's vibrantly connecting. So especially webinars, and they are introducing people. I presented in plenty of events, and the digital media sponsor for today, and Articulate team, they're presenting on these events. So whenever we presenting on these ecosystem, then only they will get to know, okay, so in Sri Lanka there are companies who really try to solve a global problem. There are companies who really looking for a global expansion. So they're willing to help us on those contexts. So it's all about you get connections, and just in a way, like a Sri Lankan to Sri Lankan discussion, not to have a sales pitch on the day one. So just to have discussions like, okay, you're working on here, how you get into that, I'm working on it, just to get introduced. So express that you are looking for this kind of opportunity. Without any expectation, definitely they will help you out. So that connection is there. I'm not sure how that's going to be working after maybe another 10 years. This generation, probably they born in another country, they don't have that connection much. So it won't be continue after that. But you are in the perfect condition where the diasporas who went and they sit in very small positions and they get grow from that, like living an American dream and so on. So now they are in very good position. So now they willing to help. The last generation willing to help this generation and to connect it. I'm not sure how the next generation could be working because they're born in that country. So I think this is the right time for next 5 to 10 years. We have this opportunity where we can connect and get some support from them, and that definitely working out. So I would really suggest LinkedIn would be the best source. Find out your mutual friends where you can connect and someone who related to it. So the world is more connected than ever. So I honestly, recently I'm running a campaign for investment forum. So it's a company called Investor Email. So my investment campaign happening on a professional company. So that company send the email to every investor in the country base. I don't know how they get the database. But one email reached out Mark Cuban as well. So the Shark Tank, one of the shark, Mark Cuban, responded to me in an email saying, okay, you are solving an important problem, but I don't have that knowledge and the domain expertise, but you just wish me good luck. So that connection happening right now. The world is more connected. There's no problem with Richard Branson or Elon Musk. There's ways you can reach out. There's an Indian entrepreneur who mentioned something called, his name is Madan Gowri. He's a YouTuber. So Elon Musk just posted the new Tesla. He posted again, like, when you bring this to India and we are looking forward to it, this would be the best price and so on. A Twitter message. Elon Musk took the time and responded and keep on replying to that conversation continuously. So people are more connected. They're willing to spend time with you if you are interested and you're doing a job properly and you're doing it honestly. So that's the important part. If you want to play around, just use their network and you are not doing a proper thing, then you are going to damage their relationship with the introduction they're going to give. Definitely that will be a problem. That will be affecting your other neighboring startups also. If you are honest enough to do something properly, then please do reach all the other networks and people around the world. Don't afraid because LinkedIn is always connecting and they are connected more than any time before. So this is the opportunity to use them.
Great. Migar, I want to ask you another way that you will have touched in terms of funding. Of course, congratulations again on winning the Land Angel Fund about 120K last week. But this, I want to touch upon the crowdfunding campaign that you ran on Kickstarter. For anyone who doesn't know, there's actually if you look into ICTA page, there's a very detailed level of discussion where Migar explained about the whole plan. But I want Migar to take about 2 minutes and explain about whole these crowdfunding aspects and how exactly you can touch to that area.
Thank you, Dhammika, for the wishes. And I think as Miller correctly mentioned, there are plenty of funding opportunities if everyone is looking for nowadays. Well, can reach out to anyone on the earth basically. So this is one of those avenues that we found because when we want to go to other markets with MagicBit, of course, a product like this, we thought it's all about developing a community, and that's why we wait for crowdfunding, not just to get funds, but of course, if you are lacking funds, if you are very confident, if you are confident about your product or the thing that you are trying to do, I think a crowdfunding would be a great way to get the required funds and the traction for a product, plus your product or the service be market validated as well, because people will feedback. So there are popular platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and we cannot directly list a project from here, from Sri Lanka, but if you can get someone, a friend or someone living in a country where you can list the project on those platforms, it can be easily done. And it's all about creating the right network and launching the campaign in a unique way and reaching out to all and spreading the word around. I think those things are the essence of crowdfunding. So basically, in most of these platforms, the most popular thing is reward-based crowdfunding, where you provide them a value proposition and ask them to pre-purchase your product or service, basically. Then you will get momentum, you will get the funds, then you have to predict it and send it to everyone. So that's the basic summary that I can give in a short time. So if you have a good idea, I think you can check out those websites, Kickstarter.com and Indiegogo.com. So those are the most popular two sites, and you can get a better understanding.
Yes. And also, if you are really interested, don't forget to watch the discussion that Migar did with ICTA team. I mean, that's a really great campaign that you have done, the way that you planned, and all the learning that you shared on that day. So thanks a lot, everyone, for joining with us and sharing your ideas. We took about 1.5 hours for this panel discussion. I want all of you to take about 1 or 2 minutes and do a final remarks for all these students who are with us today, which from the beginning to now, we had the constant crowd, which is I'm quite happy about. Just take a minute, maybe we can start with the order that we followed in the initial keynote from Alok.
Okay, very quickly. So if you have any entrepreneurial aspirations, or if you want to start a startup, my advice would be focus on problems that you're already facing, and then try to figure out whether these problems are worth solving, whether there's enough money in it, or would people be willing to pay for it, and of course whether there's a possibility for you to take these ideas outside of the country and expand. So this is where I would start. And also in terms of learning, I mean, bring together teams that are far more diverse, and of course focus on like continuous learning, and always think that, okay, I mean, there's always someone who's doing things better than you are right now. So be humble about it, and like even you know, be who we are. We are still taken to school by some of the most unassuming people. So be humble about who you are also. So these are the few things that I can give you in a nutshell.
Thanks, Arab. Migara?
I think we should thank everyone for being patient for this whole. And so my suggestion for everyone would be, for an undergraduate trying to figure out what to do. What I would like to suggest, apart from what Alok said, is maybe explore different options. Try to join different forums, discussions, and there are plenty of options now out there. So then I think you can figure out what you would like to do, and also don't be afraid to try out your ideas, because developing a startup, because I think if you can develop an MVP and sell it to someone, you don't even need to register a company. So basically, if you can understand that truth, you can solve a problem, and if it has commercial value, basically you don't even have to register a company to sell it to someone, right? Then so that's the idea. So first you have to find a solution which has some market value, right? So think about those things. You can do this. You can pretty much do that while you are studying. You can pretty much do that while you are working somewhere. You can pretty much do that while you are on holiday, right? So don't think hard and try to develop a unicorn first. I think it's all about trying to develop something simple, trying to solve a problem. So just enjoy the process and try to do something like that. And wish you all the best for everything and for your future. And thanks for giving this option.
Great. Mila, what can you add into the table as a final note?
Definitely. So, guys, do whatever makes you happy, and you can spend 24 hours. So that choose your career path on that particular domain. That's ultimately here. At the same time, so you come up with an idea, and if it's not working, don't ever worry or take it as personal. It's kind of, that's so chin up and prepare to back up and pivot yourself to the working model. So don't be more adamant on startup. It's very, very dangerous, especially on the initial stages. So at the same time, as Alok said in early days, early part of it, fail fast. If you're failing, try out something today itself, and if you're failing, it's okay. So be more cautious on your investments and the way you're going to work. And importantly, I'm not believe on individual startups. I love to see more startup which is more stable, which have a diverse hat bearing teams. So at least 2 or 3. So individuals find very hard times in terms of launching something. So I won't be here if my team is not there, because we choose our hats and we play our role. It's very hard or else. So be a team player and prepare to pivot and be brave. That's the only thing I want to say. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Ida. Buddhishan?
Yes, as the final note, I would say, if you are willing to start a startup, I would say you don't have to focus on the salary or funding. Just focus on the value that you can create. And also when you are scaling up with the team, that you need to empower the team, learn from them, even from an intern. Just listen to them and just try to figure out whether we can improve ourselves, and share our thoughts and make them a chance to improve. And as a policy, actually, I believe in improving the people so that they can go to another place, but they will actually stay in our place because of the culture we are trying to build. And if you are trying to build a company or a brand or a startup, just do it because it satisfies you, it makes you happy. So that's the end. And I usually mention this. So IT, so this is all about IT. So IT is another thing that we can do to make Sri Lanka a better place, because tourism industry is going down. Now it's okay a bit, but it's going down. And usually what happens is the maids, the women, innocent women who are in the Middle East who generated money for Sri Lanka. So since we have a great team inside Sri Lanka, we have great talent with the expertise outside, with the resources we have. I think we can build a great job. We can do a great job with IT and get the economic situation in Sri Lanka in a better place if we do it correctly with the great passion, with the correct passion, with the right attitude. Yeah, that's the final thought I had. And thank you very much again for inviting me and having me.
Thanks a lot, 𝗏𝗪𝗀𝗃, මිගාර, බුද්ධිෂන්, and Miller for sharing this experience. And as he mentioned, like Sri Lanka from ICT and all that perspective, and with a bigger ecosystem now, there's a lot of buzz and there's a lot of support system around startups. And we are in a 1,000 startup journey from the national point of view. So we hope all of the students here today will try out things, and if possible, then you will make it to a proper startup. Some would fail and learn good lessons, and they would rethink about how exactly they can pivot and come back. And some others would actually be really good, valuable employees in these startups and all the ecosystem that's built around it. So with that note, I would like to wish you all the best luck with the hackathon, and thanks again for staying with us over about 1.5 hour panel discussion, and then about 40-minute initial sessions that we had, quite a long one, but it was really interesting. And thanks again, and I'm giving back the control to Sakit and team, Vagishan team.
Thank you very much, Dhammika and all the panelists. So that brings us to the end of our panel discussion. I believe it was a very informative session, and I think audience got the best out of this. So before the conclusion, I would like to appreciate our panelists and our moderator for today's session on behalf of the organizing committee of Hackathon RISEUP Industrial Talks with Entrepreneurs. First up, I would like to offer a virtual token of appreciation for Mr. 𝗏𝗏. So thank you for being with us today, and please accept this token of appreciation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, I would like to offer a token of appreciation for Mr. මිගාර අමිතෝදන for being with us and sharing your experience. Sir, I would like to invite you to accept this as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And next, Mr. Miller Alexander, thank you, sir, for your contribution and the support towards today's panel discussion. And please accept this token of appreciation.
Thank you so much, Jane.
Next, we have Mr. Buddhishan Manamperi. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I would like to offer this token of appreciation, and I invite you to kindly accept this.
Thank you very much.
Last but not least, our moderator for today's panel discussion, Dhammika Marasinghe. Thank you, Ayya, for joining us today. And I think you did a splendid job in terms of moderating the panel discussion. So I would like to offer this token of appreciation for you, and I kindly invite you to accept this.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for the great work that you have done.
Thank you very much, Dhammika. And before concluding today's session, I would like to invite all the participants to turn on your cameras to take a group photograph. We'll give you a minute to turn on your cameras. We'll give you 20 seconds more. Okay, so the technical team, please take the photo in 3, 2, 1, cheese. Thank you very much, everyone. So there's a small announcement to make. There will be another session on startups in the game development industry on tomorrow at 4 p.m. onwards. So I kindly invite all of you to join that as well, because I assure you it will be a very informative session as well for the game development enthusiasts. So I hope today's session was very useful to all of you, and we believe you have got something out of it. Having said that, it's time to conclude this session. Thank you once again for all the panelists, the moderator, and the participants for joining us, and see you all in tomorrow's session as well. Until then, have a good day. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Recording stopped.